I'm Margie Summers.
I'm Holly Pierce.
I'm Karina Tarpening.
And I am Melissa Barrowman.
Okay, so we have done our parent interviews, and I will ask Karina to go first to explain who she had interviewed and talk about her interview.
So I interviewed a mother who has two boys, both of which are intelligent, and her oldest child is actually very gifted, and so she struggles with feeling as though her second born son is unintelligent, as though he really struggles in school, as though he's not very bright or very sharp. And he actually is, and he gets good grades, and he does really well, just compared to his older brother, who is extremely intelligent, who's far advanced. And he's 7 years old, and he's reading like at an 8th grade level. So he's just much further ahead, but she struggles to compare the two, and she'll often think that her second born son is slow or there's something wrong with him, just because she got used to her first child initially. And I think she felt embarrassment while talking about her second son, initially, because she was saying like, well, he's not as good as my older son in this, or he's just not that great at this, and he's not really advanced in this area, when really he was doing fine, because she's talked to his teachers. But that mentality, she says, is really hard for her to break out of, and to not view him as having a delay or a disorder of some sort. And I think sometimes she's worried that she's not going to feel as much pride in her second child because of those issues. And right now, the two boys don't seem to notice that there's a difference between them. They're pretty young, and they get along really well. But it's more, she wonders how her view is going to affect them when really the second child doesn't have a developmental delay. It's just perceived delay because of the difference between the two. That makes sense.
Yeah. So what is your sense of normal compared to what do you think is normal?
Me personally, do you mean?
Yeah, you personally. What do you think? So after doing the interview, what do you think your sense of normal means?
So I think normal would be if maybe there was a subject or two that was a little bit more challenging, but you were still able to have an enjoyable school experience. You were still able to connect with other children easily and be able to have good relationships. And that's kind of where her second child is. He actually does really well in most subjects in school. There are a couple that he's just average. He just doesn't excel in them. But I think her definition of normal is just skewed because of her older child. Or maybe my definition is skewed. I don't know. Mine is like more middle of the road, like regular.
No, I get you. I get you. Definitely. Okay, I think both the other questions that are asked, like you had answered those. One question I just wanted to ask, how did she become more aware that her son was gifted? Like, was it before he went to school, do you know, or was it?
So I think she really started noticing that he was gifted, and like juxtaposition to her second child. Because the next one came along and he didn't talk as soon as the first one did, and he didn't pick up things as soon as the first one did, whereas her first son was interested in focusing on books from only a few months old. Like, he could stare at the book even though maybe he didn't comprehend what was going on, whereas her second child, his attention span just wasn't as long. He got bored and wanted to do something else. And so I think initially she just thought something was wrong with her second son. And then that like kind of developed as she saw more children to compare it with, that her firstborn was really just weirdly gifted.
Well, awesome. Okay. I'm going to ask Margie to go next.
Okay. So with the parent I talked to, they have an autism boy. So looking at this autism boy compared to the other kids, they really struggled. They didn't know how to help him because they pretty much compared us like, why does he have to be autism compared to these other kids? So talking to this parent and also talking to this child's primary teacher, she struggled. The primary teacher struggled how to teach on this kid's level, and then also trying to keep the kids in primary class learning and involved, and with trying to compare both of those, autism and the regular kids, to learn about the scriptures. The primary teacher really struggled. She did not want that kid in the class. She wanted him out of it. But after a while, seeing the kid and being in the class with him actually brought happiness and peace to her and the kids actually learned better because the lessons were more down on a smaller and understanding level for the other kids to learn. Normalcy would have been, I don't know, because looking at those two, being normal for the parent, she wishes that he was normal. Didn't have to go to special activities or learn sign language or anything. She just wants a normal, happy child. But with the primary teacher, she thought, after learning him, being with him for a few months, she thought he was normal. He's the best thing that ever happened to him in the class. Because she's learning stuff and felt like more the spirit was more in the classroom with them than actually without them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so how do you think the parents knew right away that their child was autistic, or did they discuss that, or did they not find out till he was older? What did you not find out?
They didn't find out till he was about 5 years old, because they thought, oh, it's normal because it's the first son. They didn't know what was going on. They've been to so many doctors, and one doctor says, oh, he's just delayed. There's nothing wrong with him. He's fine. But actually, they went to a specialist. He says, no, he has autism. And this is what we need to do. This is why he's not talking. We need to get in special classes with you and everybody to help communicate.
Okay. When I have some thoughts on that, and I wrote them down so that we can discuss after when we dive deeper. Do you think that they were receptive to receiving those services, or do you think that they were kind of more standoffish, like there's nothing wrong with my son?
At first, they were like, no, there's nothing wrong. But after a while, looking and actually working with someone, they was at first. They didn't want nothing. Like, no, my child's fine. He's just delayed. But after talking to some people, to the specialist, then they realized, no, he needs help. And then they needed help to move forward to help him.
Okay, that sounds great. I am now going to ask Melissa to go ahead and do her interview.
Great. I interviewed a close friend. She has been married for 11 years. They're an interracial couple. They have 2 children, a daughter and a son. Her oldest is 9 and her son is 7. And her daughter has special needs. She's has severe ADD, not ADHD, but ADD and generalized anxiety disorder. Interestingly enough, the father also suffers with ADD and emotional behavioral problems and irregularities. So, with talking to her about the development of both children and if they've followed the normal growth of development, she said that they both did follow the stages of development at the timing, except her oldest, the 9-year-old, the daughter who has problems, was really delayed in potty training, like almost 5 years old before she was fully potty trained, whereas the son was potty trained before. So she started noticing around 5 years old that her daughter was having issues. She was having a lot of emotional instabilities and hyperactivities. She started to not eat well. She started to have insomnia really bad. And of course, that's when she started kindergarten. And so as she went through kindergarten, 1st grade, and then she went on to 2nd grade, it got really bad to where she was having massive anxiety attacks during school. And she was having emotional outbursts. She had rage at home, and then like she'd pick her up from school and just she was unconsolable a lot of the times because of her social skills. She just lacked in social skills. She isolated herself instantly. So around 9 years old, around 7, 8 years old is when she finally, after talking with the school counselor and the teachers, they put her on a program called the 504 plan. Say that 5 times fast. And this is a government supported, it's a federal government supported civil rights law that gives support to physical and emotional health, disability, and to educational children in the support system, like in the educational system. This program allows them, once you are in it, you're diagnosed and then you're put in it, that gives you the ability to take longer on your test. If she needs a timeout during class, like if she's starting to feel anxiety, she's allowed to go take a break and take, whatever she needs to bring herself back to not being normal, but being controllable with her emotional behavior. And then there's also a military relation counselor, because they're an active duty family, that she meets every other week with at the school. This group is with other active duty military kids. They talk about social skills, they communicate, they talk about their feelings, how to deal with their feelings, they do art projects. And then they finally got her daughter in to see a psychiatrist that she meets every other week. And that psychiatrist also has ADD. And so the relationship of relating, comparing war stories like we learned with last week with self-regulation, that she's able to put her daughter in these therapies that teach her, that encourages social skills, communication skills, like I messages, I feel this, I think this, so you can verbally more express yourself when you can't formulate it in your brain, when you can't emotionally regulate how you're feeling. Part of the therapy, they do like plant therapy, which helps with breathing techniques. It's therapeutic techniques. So there's plant class, there's an art class, there's a yoga class for her that the child goes through. And she mentioned it's really hard for her to have a spouse that has emotional irregularities and ADD. The son is highly affected. He doesn't know, being 7, he doesn't know how to react to when his big sister is all over the place emotionally. The mom, she indicates, has a hard time with her having a connection with her daughter. So she lacks a parent-child relationship with her daughter because she just doesn't have the patience. She doesn't fully understand what her daughter's thinking, what really triggers. They haven't really discovered like her triggers on. One minute she'll be emotionally okay, the next she won't be. They don't understand, there isn't really a correlation there where they can figure out her triggers. So the mom has a really difficult time with the patients, and then trying to micromanage the support to the son, and then you have the husband that's going, has his problems, and then she feels just kind of like stuck on how do I help my child. Luckily, her child is in that 504 plan. Luckily, her child is meeting with his psychologist weekly, and they're doing those great therapy sessions where it's helping her with her social skills. It's helping her communicate. It's helping her therapeutically learn how to handle her emotions. And then on top of that, they are regulating her medication. So she's been on a couple different medications this whole time. And she says the biggest challenge with the medication is that she's a growing child. So what worked 4 months ago, she mentioned her daughter had a growth spurt over the summer. Well, that affected her medication. And so it's been really hard for them to find the right medication. So right now she's on Ritalin, and that's helping for the moment, but they anticipate that that's going to need to change. And as she continues to keep growing, just not just physically, but cognitively. And then, so it sounds like they're getting a good care plan for her. She's getting the support that she needs. Sadly, the mom feels like I also need support. Where's my parent intervention therapy? Where's my support group? And I had mentioned to her, I gave her the link to that documentary that we watched last week about friendships, and gave her that link along with the transcript. And then I mentioned, why don't you go on some blogs like Social Network and find other parents who are dealing with children with emotional behavioral problems like your daughter. And then, if you have a parent support system, then that can help you, oh, I can do this, or just the feeling of I've got support outside of, all the focus is on the daughter. Maybe I can learn how to self-regulate. Maybe I can learn how to have a better parent-child relationship with my daughter. Kind of like if you would go to Al-Anon, if you had an alcoholic family member, you go to a support group to learn how to deal with that alcoholic family member. It's the same concept. So I encourage her to get going on social networking, because I'm sure you can find a whole network of support with families that deal with her daughter's particular diagnosis. She did mention that she worries for her daughter as she gets older, because she is majoring in developmental psychology. She's getting her master's. So she knows the statistics that if she's got a child that has developmental problems, emotional problems, ADD, that if she can't self-regulate now, she knows she's going to have problems when she's an adult. She sees that in her husband. She does not want that for her daughter. And so she's really hoping that since now her daughter's in 4th grade, they're now in the system, it's going to be a continued process. At first she realized, she thought medication would just take care of it. Now she just threw that out the window. That's just a complete fallacy. She said it really is medication, therapy, breathing techniques. It's a whole slew of support from many aspects of the community, the school system, church. She mentioned like her activity days leader from church has gotten involved with the communication with her about her daughter so she can know how to handle her daughter during activity days. And so that's great. Again, she needs to find her own support too as a parent to figure out, how can I have the energy, the patience, the support to help my daughter along with everybody else helping my daughter. So anyway.
Well, good. Okay, I will go next. So I had interviewed my best friend. Our husbands are best friends. They had been best friends since elementary school. And so naturally we did everything together prior to both of us getting married. And they live across the street from me, and they have lived across the street from me for the past 10 years. So we are best friends, and I have watched her raise her children over the years, and she has, let me just lower this real quick. She has 7 kids, and they all range from 14 to 2 years old. Yeah. So every 2 years she had a child. So her 4th child was born, and the minute I held him, I could tell something was off. He just was not, he was not, I want to say normal, what we would say as a normal baby. Babies tend to be soft and cuddly, and will make eye contact with you within the first few hours of life. And the minute I held him, he was very stiff. He was very rigid. And, but how do you tell your friend, hey, this newborn seems off? You don't. So, over the years, I could tell how different he was, as he started getting older. And she just thought he was the most perfect baby ever. And as we started getting more years into it, 2 years old, he's still not talking. He's still not potty trained. He's he's walking, but he had just started walking. And finally, one of her sister was babysitting, and one of her sister's friends has an autistic child, and asked if, and she's like, hey, her son is autistic. And so her sister said something to her, and she's like, hey, have you ever had him tested for autism? And she's like, no. But he was such a perfect baby. He never cried. He never screamed. Nothing. I mean, you just didn't get any emotion out of him at all. And so she just thought he was perfect. She already had 3 other kids, and she's like, I needed this break of no screaming baby all the time. And she just thought it was great. Well, fast forward, 5 years old, he's still not potty trained. He still cannot talk. He still is now, anger has started to come into the picture, where now he lashes out because he probably doesn't know how to relay his feelings and what he's thinking because he can't talk. And so now he's becoming frustrated. And so when I was talking with her and interviewing her about this, I asked her if she had kind of felt denial. And she said, yeah, absolutely. She's like, I think that I had lived in denial until he was 5 years old. She's like, I knew that he was different than my other 3 kids. I mean, she's like, I've had 3 other kids that were completely normal. And she's like, I think I was just in denial. I didn't want to deal with it. And the downside to that is the help he could have been getting at an early age to help him try to communicate and try to talk. And, now she has him in, special schooling. He is potty trained finally. I think he got potty trained at 7 years old. He has many different things. She's taken him to many specialists, and it's not just autism. He has what is called, let me pull it up real quick. He has what is called they believe he has Fragile X syndrome, which is a chromosome. It's a difference in chromosomes, and it causes you to have your kind of a larger forehead, and then your ears are kind of big and they're kind of further down on the head. And when she said when she looked it up, it has to be done by a blood. They have to determine it by a DNA test, and they can't afford the DNA test, so they haven't done it. But when she looked up pictures, she's like, oh yeah, that's definitely my son. And when I looked it up, because I didn't know what it was, you can definitely see the facial features of the distinction between these kids. And they believe he also has 3 other problems, but they aren't sure exactly. He's so just different in every case. They know for sure he has autism. And so right now they have him in a special ed class where he goes with 9 other students. So he's in a very small class. There's only 10. And the school is trying to push him into integrating into a regular classroom. And she's been fighting that because she's like, there's no way. His teacher says there's no way. There's no way he can be in a normal setting of a classroom. It has caused much contention in the family just because he's not normal. He doesn't know how to communicate what he wants to say. He does talk a lot better now. I remember the first time he called me Holly, I was like, oh my gosh, Rich, you said my name. It was like the biggest highlight. I think he was like 7 years old. And it was kind of a fun day. He's a great kid. He's definitely a special person. He's very into church. He loves, even though he doesn't act well in church, he's doing better. But he's grasping it. He'll talk like very, I don't know how to say it. He's not like a normal, he's 9 years old. So not like a normal 9-year-old. He talks about heavenly beings. Like he'll say heavenly beings, and you're like, okay, 9-year-olds don't say heavenly beings, like just stuff like that. Like, but he likes to talk like that. And he draws to certain people. They aren't sure why. Like my oldest son, who's 16, he is drawn to him. He constantly tries to find him at church. He constantly tries to find him. And he's so like, he'll hold on to you. Like he'll grab your arm and he'll just hold on to you and cling to you while asking you 180 questions over and over and over again. And so it's sweet how, my son, he realizes it and he goes with it, and he's, hey, you're my best friend, like he goes with them. And so it has been a very huge challenge for her over the years to try. And she said the biggest thing that she has is, besides being overwhelmed, is that people don't understand because he looks normal. He does still look normal, even though he has these distinct features. And so when he lashes out at the grocery store or wherever, people will look at her like, geez, you can't control your child. And it really breaks her down. And she said the thing that she just wants the most is for her son to find a friend. And it was interesting because that was the video we watched, and I told her I would like her to watch it, and and to see. But anyway, so I think that's it. That's my friend with her 7 children trying to raise one that is autistic and many other things, and it's always chaos at her house. When you go to her house, it will never be peace and quiet. It is full on chaos when you have 7 kids and 14 years. It's pretty insane over there. So her husband will often come sit in our family room and just sit, who's, my husband's best friend too. So it's not like that weird, but he'll come over and just sit in our family room and just like, I needed a break, you guys, I needed some quiet. And it just makes me laugh. And I'm like, but your wife needs quiet too. Why don't you send her over and you can go back, because she's been dealing with them all day. So that is it. For me, I think that we need to open up to just regular discussion now. Hey, Melissa, how are we on time? How much time are we on?
Well, the meeting should be about 50 to 60 minutes, and we're at 30 minutes.
Okay, so we have about 20 minutes of talking, asking questions. I did write down some notes on each person's study that they did, their interview. And so I can start off by asking my questions, and if you guys have a comment or anything in between that, just hop in. You don't need to raise your hand or anything, just hop in. So I'll start with Karina, since that was the first one that had gone. So do you think that when she figured out that her son is gifted, I can see how she wasn't really sure, because he was her first. And so she didn't have anything to compare it to. And typically when it's your first, you're not out there making best friends, your son's best friends, because you're at home trying to just learn how to be a mom.
Survive.
Yeah. It's a whole new world when you become a mom. So you're just trying to get used to this before you add another child to it. So you're not out there socially mingling yet. That kind of typically happens when you have your second one and you need your first one to have a play friend so you can take a breather. So when she first figured it out, that, hey, yeah, my son is specially gifted, do you think she's going to try and get him into some special schools that are specifically for gifted students? Because I know around in Arizona, we have those kind of schools.
That's a really awesome question. We actually talked about that because she's afraid he won't make friends. It was interesting to listen to, because I feel like everyone else kind of studied a child that had that was struggling in some area, and although this young man he's very intelligent, that sometimes causes him problems. So
Socially, I'm sure.
Because he's so much smarter than other children, he often thinks that he's the smartest person ever. So he'll sometimes think he's more intelligent than adults. He'll sometimes think he's smarter than the teacher. He'll sometimes think that his mom doesn't know what she's talking about. Like, he's very cocky is like the wrong word, but he's just
I get it.
Really smart. He knows he's smart. And so she's afraid if she puts him into a gifted school that he'll be alone forever, because then he'll be either a lot younger than other kids or will be ostracized from other people. So she's not really sure what to do with that. And aside from continuing to let him, because he really loves school. He hasn't reached a point where he's like, Mom, I'm bored with what I'm learning in school. He really loves it. It's very easy for him.
Maybe you can suggest that she puts her child in programs that are designed for gifted students or gifted child. Like I know our community, like the community center, offers like astronomy, like chess club would be a perfect example where his intelligence would be focused on an activity where a lot of people just don't like chess, except those who are gifted and smart. And then he's also developing social skills in those localized type of group activities. And
Where
he's,
everyone's like the
and he's
same.
making friends. Yes. So it's, environmental science is a perfect example where there's many clubs out there where he can join, and it can accelerate and spark his areas of interest that are more than his age level or whatnot, and then it gets him involved with other people. One thing I really liked about the documentary last week was how he specifically mentioned about sports and how those who have a problem with social skills, this child, even though he's gifted, could and probably does have social skills developing friends. Put them in a golf league. Put them in a type of a sport where it's not a team organized sport where he's not going to excel, but more it's going to focus on his intelligence, but also develop friendships. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And then
I totally agree.
I don't want to say the wrong word, but you have chess club, you have physics club, you have all these special clubs that are kind of for those who in engineering, like the YMCA here, they actually have an engineering where they do Lego engineering.
Oh, my nephew would love that. I mean, whoever this kid is.
And so they're building like battle bots, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they're applying engineering concepts at such a young age with Legos. That's like genius.
He does it alone.
Right. So
he does on a Saturday.
Then he's with other children who also accelerate, who are also gifted and get it. And
maybe that would help him connect, because then he's not like, oh, I'm so much smarter than you. It'd be like they were equals.
Right. I feel like sometimes as parents, we feel very limited resources, how to internet and search for resources. I think that's one problem where we know we have this with our child. What are we going to do about it? Well, are we really exploring our resources? Are we really is this child old enough for Scouts?
Yeah. I think initially, she didn't think about things like that. She did think he was going to be ostracized because sometimes he doesn't get along with other children. Because the kids don't like it when they're bossed around and told that they're dumb.
The scouting program is also a program that can help develop those social skills and help encourage his intellectual skills, and plus it's teaching him life skills that are very, very important.
Yeah, I don't think he's old enough. He said he's 7.
I have 4 boys. So I know it's important. So
yeah, because I know once he starts into Scouts, which is next year, because he's 7 years old, right, Karina?
Yeah.
Yeah. So next year, and once he starts Scouts, they have merit badge clinics for robotics and engineering and all these things, and so that she can actually go on to the Boy Scouts of America website and find go into their district unit, and then they will have classes for all of those merit badges that have robotics and engineering and astronomy and all those things. Chess club and all this, and so he'll be able to go in and he can work on those on the weekends and just go to these clinics that, I mean, they're not expensive. They're like $5 to join or $10, and anyways, they get their merit badge done, but he can also meet some friends that are kind of unique and doing the same thing. And I think a lot of them actually do clubs, monthly clubs, besides doing the merit badge. So those are just some ideas that, that could be for that she can try to get him into, that for kids that are kind of, you know, like him, that like the things that he likes, and he might realize, oh, I'm not like the only one that is like this, and that there's other people that are just like me, and I can be a lot of friends. And then, so I have a question for Margie. So Margie, you're talking about the autistic boy, and how the parents struggle to try to help him just in general, because having an autistic child is very hard to deal with. And so in primary, you know, you talked about primary. Did whoever you spoke to, your friend, or did they say that they felt attacked when they had to keep coming to get her because their son was acting up and the teacher didn't want him, and that whole thing? Because I know with my friend, when she had to have a meeting with the primary president and the bishop and the primary teacher, she just felt like she was being attacked. Like, your son is horrible, no one wants him in the class. That's how she felt, even though that's not. I had to have a really long conversation with her about, that's not what they meant. You're overanalyzing this. They're trying to find a way to help him, to make it more enjoyable for him to be at church, and for the kids in his class to be able to want to be there and to learn. And like, it was, but I think it was just kind of pulled in proportion. So Margie, what do you think happened with your friend when the whole primary thing was happening? Do you think, was it kind of the same thing?
Yeah, at first, you know, she goes to church, she felt like primary was her time to breathe and not worry about the child. She thought he'll be fine. But every time they come out, if the child was like, oh, he turned around and slugged the kid next to him for no reason, she thought, and she felt, is it worth it going to church because this kid's acting up? Nobody would help him or take care of him.
Yeah.
So
I think it is, that's such a hard. I know with my friend, they assigned they had a calling for somebody, and the first person they called was actually absolutely amazing. She was actually, that's what she was studying, was children with handicaps, and so she was absolutely perfect to have that calling. And she just she went everywhere with him, and they became best friends, and they ended up moving, so they had to call somebody else. And so it's been great since then, you know, because he has gotten better. He's gotten older, so he has gotten better. But in the beginning, when he was still young and still couldn't talk and communicate, so he lashed out by hitting or biting or kicking, or it was very, very hard. So I was just kind of curious about that. Does anybody else have questions for Margie on hers?
I know with like church support, when I was a young women's president in ward council, we would talk about, for our ward, when it comes to Fifth Sunday, the third hour is combined, where all the adults come together and the youth teach the primary age children. I don't know how everybody else deals with Fifth Sunday, but it was mentioned because our ward has a lot of special needs. There's a lot of adults with emotional, that suffer with mental illness, depression, bipolarism, and then we have a lot of children in our ward that are also ADHD, autistic. There's some handicaps there, and no one really kind of knows how to deal with it. So it was mentioned, hey, can we have a specific meeting that we can get? Luckily, someone from the state is a behavioral psychologist. He came in and talked on a doctoral aspect of behavioral medicine, but also talked to the whole ward about how we can all support the people in the ward who have a mental illness, the children who have a mental, like who have mental problems, emotional behavioral problems, stuff like that. And just that awareness to other people in the ward really helped out the understanding. So it's really easy to pass judgment when you see a child in church behaving badly, right, in his church, and especially during the sacrament, and everyone is supposed to be reverent. But then when you understand and identify, okay, this family, let's be open. This particular family has this problem. This family has this problem. If there's that awareness and disclosure on that issue, then maybe everyone will not be quick to judge that family and step in and help out. So that's a suggestion. I don't know if that's a possibility, but if she's speaking with her bishop or the primary president, that could be something that she could say, hey, even for herself, I don't know a whole lot. Is there somebody in the stake that knows more that can maybe come in and teach us?
Yeah.
Or have a special learning leadership meeting, right? Or something like that to help out?
Yeah, the board is starting to jump in and starting to help her out a lot more with everything. They finally decided to have a one-on-one, like at school and also at church. And so that's helping out. And they're starting to realize the Lead Society is like, okay, let me help you with the other kids so you can actually have a breather, because she's a single mom. And so she has no time to herself because she's always taking care of the kids. And so the board is starting to step up a lot. After it takes about 5 months of asking for help, they finally are starting to do help her.
Okay.
Well, that's good.
Good.
Melissa, I had a couple questions
Okay.
for you. So knowing that the father had ADD and the daughter has ADD, do you see a genetic connection here between the people that you know and the illnesses that are traveling through families? Do you think there's a genetic code, or do you think it's just by chance?
I think it's both a genetic and environmental influences. She has some social anxiety problems herself, where she feels like she's trapped and she doesn't like to be put on the spot. She doesn't like public speaking. She's got her own social anxiety problems. So it's not a surprise that she has a daughter that suffers with ADD and generalized anxiety. But then the biggest challenge for her is the spouse, where he lacks any type of motivation or being proactive on his own care. So she has just, it's a link. We know through what we have learned in child development that there is a genetic link. It can be passed down, and we also know that your environment is a huge influence on these genetic factors and how they will be expressed, and to the extent that they will be expressed. If you have a home that is chaotic, if you have a home that doesn't have consistency, doesn't have stability, doesn't have many of these factors that these ADD children need in order to self-regulate, to emotional regulate, then they won't be able to develop those skills that are necessary to be emotionally regulate,
Mm-hmm. No, I get you.
And I see, what's sad is I see there are children that I see in our ward who are severe ADHD. Their home life is all over the place. So when they act out, what is sad is that they will say, this would be like in Cub Scouts, they would say, well, I can act out this way because I'm ADHD. No, whoa. Who's teaching you that? Well, you're getting that teaching. What's being taught at home? Is your behavior okay? No, it is not okay. My husband is ADHD, and he's fully functioning adult. He's a success in his job. They told him he would never graduate from high school or get a college education, and he'd probably be a transient. That's what they told his parents. His parents massively intervened, pushed him in the right direction. And here he is. He's successful in the military. He's almost graduated with his master's, and he's fully functional. So it's hard for him to see these kids who say, well, I can get away with this because I'm ADHD, where he is ADHD. And it's like, no, you cannot. So I think it's great that this girl is seeing this therapist who also suffers from ADD. They can share the worst, she can share war stories with her. They can go through these techniques. Hopefully she can bring it home and try and teach it to her husband.
Mm-hmm.
Try and hopefully the son doesn't lash out in his own way because all the attention's going to her, all the attention's going to him. So they have a challenge. They've got a road ahead of them. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah,
But
I think as you're talking, like, I kind of makes me wonder. One, I have two thoughts. One, are the parents just using that as an excuse because they don't, not excuse as in they're looking for an excuse as to why their child's that way, but as an excuse because it's too much work to try to fix it. So when they lash out, their parents are like, oh, they're ADD or they're ADHD. And that's like the excuse. Well, then the child hears that and is like, well, I do this because I'm ADHD. Right. So they're internalizing it. And instead of doing what your husband's parents did and turn it around and say, no, you're not defined by ADHD. You're not defined by ADD. You are better than that. You will overcome it. And these are the steps to help you do that. And whereas I think now a lot of laziness has occurred in our society where parents just kind of, when their child starts acting out, they just kind of, let's look for an excuse as to why they're acting out and blame it on this excuse. And then my other thought was, do you think there's a lot more ADD happening in our society because we have so much stuff going on around us? That is so hard to concentrate on something because we have electronics over here, we have TVs over here, we have school over here, we have activities over here. We're constantly juggling things. And inside a little tiny brain that's continuing to grow, they don't know which one to focus on and which one to start doing. So then their brain starts going in different directions all the time. Those are just my thoughts as you were talking. I was just kind of like, well, I wonder about this. What are your guys' thoughts?
Well, I think social conditioning is huge. Just like I said, environmental influences is also social conditioning. If we're socially conditioning our society to, I don't think our society is really directing or really taking a huge approach on mental illness as far as diagnosis and treatment. But then we're quick to treat, we're quick to diagnose without really properly doing everything that it takes to properly diagnose. So, try this, try that, try this, laboratory type thing. Why I've noticed, particularly with the Army, when we were in Fort Bragg, it's like there were so many children that are autistic, and they actually did a study about the number of children born coming out of Fort Bragg that ended up being autistic. Well, is there something in the water? What's going on? Like, where we have this kind of, we're seeing more autistic children, we're seeing more ADHD children. People want to put blame on immunizations. People want to put blame, there's several different aspects of blaming. I think, though, we have challenges. Challenges can be overcome. We're not defined by what's been our diagnosis. We know that plasticity is amazing in the critical sensitive periods of development. We know that can change. Plasticity can change for someone who, like my husband in high school, who's failing, who the only thing he was really good at was wrestling, and for them to say to his parents, there's no hope for your son at an older adolescence, even that changing at that time, there's, you don't lose hope. you don't lose that plasticity, continues to keep going and keep going and keep going.
Yes.
So,
I wanted to touch on, oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh, you're fine. Go ahead.
I just wanted to touch on the last question that we have. And the question is, what can you learn from this experience about normative variation, maturational delay, transient disorders, or persistent impairments? And do you see any themes or patterns occurring in your discussion and findings about your respective interviews?
So I think one pattern that I've noticed is that no matter what issue someone is dealing with, whether that's a kid who struggles to get along with other children because they feel like they're smarter than other kids, or children who have emotional struggles, or children who have autistic tendencies, that one of the hardest parts is finding support and love for probably the mother of that child, and making sure that that mom feels like she's not failing, or she has support with someone, or someone else understands what she's going through. And also that no matter what the issue is, there are things that the parents can do to help. There are a lot of options in society to help them overcome it, whether it is transient and it's something that's just like, yes, right now you're really struggling with ADD, but you can get that under control and you can be able to function, or whether they have something like low functioning autism that really, like, you can kind of help it, but it's going to be their whole lives and they're never going to function like a regular adult. But there's a lot of things available to make the journey easier for everyone, regardless of what the situation is.
Very good. There's one thing. Oh, go ahead.
I think what I've learned is that there's a lot of transient disorders. And when we were talking about transitional characters, there's so many aspects in our lives that are multiply happening at one time that makes transition constant. We're always in a state of transition. And so how do we handle those transitions? Are we consistent? I think we need to be consistent. That helps stability. If we remember that in our transition that we are applying gospel principles and we're maintaining those gospel principles in those transitions, I think that's very, very important in how the family dynamic handles the situation, how they support the person in the family that's going through the struggle, and they help with the transition. If you have a Christ-like centered home and you focus on that and make sure that that's in there, I think Christ is the miracle. He can make things happen. He can help with that transition if you just have that faith, you apply it, and hopefully for those who aren't members that you might know that have children with disabilities and they've got they've got struggles in their family and their transitions, that you try to teach them service within the family unit, consistency, relying on each other, family, right? Mm-hmm. And those are just my thoughts.
Very good. Margie, did you have any thoughts?
I think, I agree with all of you. Rely on each other. Look for the support groups. I just had a thought and I just lost it.
If you want, I can do mine and tell you, and then you can just raise your hand. Okay. So to answer some of the questions on the normative variation, I don't know if there really is any sense of normal when it comes to people in general. I think you can have, like, if you take 1,000 people and you ask them, okay, when were you potty trained? And they can all pretty much say between 1 and 3 years old. But I think as far as just personal, we are all unique in our own, in everything. I mean, we are all unique, and I don't think we can say that, oh, I'm normal. I am very much weird in certain things that I do. I know that. I think everyone has their own little quirks that they do. And when it comes to the maturational delay, I think it was interesting when we did ours, except for Karina, your little 7-year-old. There were certain delays that people saw when it came to these kind of mental disabilities. You know, they were a little bit delayed on everything. You know, potty training was yours, Melissa, Margie. They said they were delayed. My friend, he was completely delayed in so many things.
It is delayed socially.
Socially, okay, yeah. So there are so many. You can see the delays. It's funny. I think it's neat how the body can those are the kind of the first cues to a parent that there might be something more than just a slow developer, I should say, or, you know, like there might be more something mentally going on that the parents can look into. And I thought it was very interesting when how the parents all were no, not my kid, like my kid's normal, you know. And I think because we all think and we want our child to be the best at every single thing, and that we don't want a child that has something that's different or something that's wrong with them. We don't want that. And you know, and when I was talking to my friend about it, and she says she just wants her son to have a friend. I told her, I'm like, but the thing is, I think in today's society, we are raising children that are more aware of differences among each other. Because I don't know, maybe I'm just skewed because we live in a bubble here where we live. But I think our kids know more kids than what I knew growing up with disabilities, whether that's physical or mental. And they're more accepting of them. Like my kids go to a high school, and there's very many socially awkward children that go to this high school. It's a high school that you have to test to get into. So it's not your normal high school. And so there's a lot of very intelligent kids that go there who are socially awkward, who are socially delayed. And I ask my son all the time, I'm like, hey, did anybody not get asked to the homecoming? And he's like, no. He's like, everyone got asked. I'm like, everyone got asked. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, what about, you know, this one girl? And he's like, Mom, she's like the most popular girl in school. I'm like, she is? And he's like, to me, that's shocking. I grew up in a time where it wasn't very accepting. And he's like, yeah, she's like the most popular girl in school. Everyone loves her. She was the first person to get asked to homecoming. And I'm like, oh, like, I just think it's becoming more socially accepted. Our kids are growing up. Maybe there's more of it. I don't know, but go ahead.
We've reached our time.
Yay.
That's a really good discussion. I liked that.
It was a very good discussion. Okay, so
I'll stop the broadcast then.
Okay.